Hey YouTube, I'm sorry that I haven't been online for the last couple weeks. Things have been really busy around here, and it was quarter close, so I was tied up with work. But wanted to spend some time today. A number of viewers had asked that I do an episode on lacing and how to lace your shoes. So I've prepared some things, some documents that I'll share, some articulated graphics that I think are a lot better than just me explaining it. But wanted to do a quick just introduction to you so you can see some of the things that are important to me when I decide about lacing, and then I'll do a conclusion at the end as well. So starting off, how you lace your shoes is going to depend on a couple of things. The first thing is it an Oxford? This is an Oxford shoe, right? Because it has the closed lacing. When it has closed lacing, the way you lace the shoe should be different because they come together, and sometimes you're going to have a V-gap, sometimes you're not, and the V-gap is just basically that V right there. How you like that to look is going to change a little bit of it. Now, when you have a derby, like this one, the derby actually is open at the bottom. Now, if the derby fits perfectly, you'll have a bit of a gap between it, but some derbies are going to close all the way, depending on the brand and depending on your foot. And if they close all the way, you might choose a different lacing system for it, because some lacing systems look better when it's closed and some look better when they're open. Just a couple of really quick examples to that. Your probably most traditional lacing system is just a regular crisscross lace. Okay? This is the lace that I did on gym shoes when I was young, and I've continued to do to this day. Now, whether you have the bottom where it's a solid line and then you do the crossing there, or if you do the bottom where the bottom is underneath and you start the crossing at the bottom, that's a style choice, and that is a style choice that's going to vary on a lot of different lacing systems that you'll notice. Now, the other thing that I think is provides a nice difference as well is whether or not you have flat laces like these, where the laces really lie flat. Now, you can get contrasting colors, you can get all kinds of different things with the laces that make it look different, but flat laces to me is another reason to choose a different lacing style, or round laces. Now, you also have your very, very tight weave, which I'll show you these. This is, they actually call this a braided lace, okay? And it's pretty tight. Then you have, like this one here. If we just compare the two, you can see this lace is a lot looser. And you can tell because you can't really squeeze that together, and this one you can, okay? So again, now there's also degrees of casualness about the laces as well. So like this loose one would be more casual. This tight one would be more formal. Round is more formal than flat, but that's all part of the decision that you need to make. I like to throw in a little bit of color, and so I'll have some wild colors that I'll put in while I'm putting my laces on. And sometimes that can be a lot of fun. You wear a pair of bone-colored suede with what I call leprechaun green. Totally changes the feel of the shoe than if you're just wearing bone-colored laces with it. So, it's something that you can have a lot of fun with, and something that can be pretty cool. So, now the other piece is the number of eyelets in the shoe, and this can be really important when you're talking about 2, 3, or 4 eyelets. So I have a pair of chukkas that has 4 eyelets. I have a pair of Budapesters that has 3 eyelets. I don't have any 2 eyelet derbies yet, but I do have 2 eyelet chukka boots, and so those, you want that to look the way you want it to look as well. And then lastly, most shoes, if you look at all of the brands, the most common scenario is to have 5 eyelets. But 5 eyelets can look really different. You can have 5 eyelets that are relatively close together, or you can have 5 eyelets that are pretty well far apart. So if you just look at this, this is 5 eyelets in the span of 3 eyelets on a shoe by the same maker. So that's a difference as well. Now the other thing that you should look at as you're examining this is whether or not the shoe is designed to have a whether or not the eyelets are symmetrical, or whether or not they create a pattern. And I'll include some pictures in my feed here. But I actually have a pair where, see how these are really close together and very symmetrical, where they're wider at the bottom and they get narrower toward the top. That way, if you have that V gap, it still looks perfectly symmetrical. So we'll talk about bar lacing, we'll talk about crisscross lacing, we'll talk about all types of different lacing that you can see. I've got some links in there that you can see maybe 14, 15 different types of lacing. So there's quite a lot out there. The other thing I'm going to talk about is the berluti knot, which is a new way of tying your shoe, which I think will be interesting as well. So we'll take a look at all of this together during this episode. I hope you find it beneficial, and I welcome your comments in the back. And then just a little bit of a preview. One other thing that I'm looking to do over the next few days is to sell a portion of my inventory of shoes as I continue to expand my collection. I'm trying to be very strategic in what I choose to add, and there are a couple brands that I'm probably going to replace the shoes that I have from them as my size has changed, and I want to make sure I have something that fits really well as I get toward the end of my collecting journey. So that's something that I'll do. And then I also have some other shoes that, candidly, I have 30 pairs of one brand, and so I'm going to probably take a little bit of that brand away as well. So be on the lookout for a video on how I chose which shoes in my collection were ones that I would keep and ones that would go. So thanks again for watching. This is Wisconsin Shoe Guy. Let me know what you think of this episode. Thanks again. Bye. So best laid plans, I decided to do something a little different with this. So instead of providing the diagrams, I'm actually going to show some of the lacing on my shoes. So just wanted to make sure everyone's aware of that. What I have here in this picture is different types of laces. You have your standard round laces, you've got flat laces, and you can see a couple different ones. You have the brightly colored laces. You also have the really soft round laces toward the end, which I think are an interesting thing. I always thought that the more formal shoes would have the tighter laces, but that's not always the case. These are ones that came with a pair of Paulo Scaforas Oxfords that I have, which are quite formal, although they are suede. So it's always a different piece. When I order custom shoes, sometimes I choose different laces. So you'll see there's a pair of braided rounds, and those are what I chose to use with my new Carmina Adelaides. So let's take a look at some of the lacing styles that we have here. Okay. First things first, we have your little cross style here. And I'll walk through how to do it, but it's relatively easy. You simply lace the flat part underneath, and then you bring the lace up through here, then you go inside, and then you go underneath to this, and then you go inside again, and then if it's a 5 eyelet, you simply come out and you tie. If it's a 6 eyelet, you can actually go up one more, or what I like to do is I'll do this part on the top, and then I'll do the 2 X's, and then I'll come out on the top here. I like to be able to tie my shoes as the laces come out here. Not all lacing styles make that possible. So it's something to keep in mind. Now, another option here that a lot of people tend to like is this diagonal. And so you actually have the lace come out on the bottom here, so then you have 2 that are going up, and then they go up diagonally, and then they go out here, and then they come out. Now, in order to have the diagonal on the top, here, I had to actually lace it through the bottom, which I don't really like to do. But that is one way of doing it there. It's an interesting lace. Certainly does get attention. I like doing it on black shoes. The black on black makes it is pretty subtle, and that's a nice way of doing it. Sometimes I'll be lazy and just tie off the top regularly, just because that's, as I said before, that's what I prefer. Now on the brown shoes here, you'll see this is your standard lacing, right? Your standard crisscross, what everybody does. This is your typical gym shoe lacing, and we'll talk a little bit about that more, but you could do the bar across the top and the bottom, from the top in, or you can do from the bottom out. Really popular on derbies. The most common lacing, I think, out on the market today. Now, sometimes you want to do something really fancy, and this is called the Architect. And I'll put in links at the bottom. It'll look like credits rolling by. But this is a fancy lace that I learned on the Alan Edmonds website, and you actually start, at the middle here. So you start at the top, and then you work your way down, and then you come back up. So it's a lot of crisscrossing. You skip a whole lot of holes as you go, but it's an interesting way of doing it, and not a terrible lace. But you do tie it in the middle, which I'm not really a fan of, and because it makes the laces sit in a different place, which just makes the shoe a little bit less comfortable, in my opinion. So, not my favorite, but it is one that people who are into lacing, and there's hundreds of ways to lace your shoes. So, take a look at the links. One of them lists 66, and I can't possibly hope to do all of those. Now, here we have your typical Oxford lace, and your typical Oxford lace is just a straight bar lacing. Now there are two ways to do this, right? You can push in on the sides here, and then you can go up here and then over, and here you go all the way up here and you go over. I don't like to do that because I find that the laces just don't feel secure if I just go up on the sides. So what I do is I cross over, and then I cross up here, and then I just create the bar, and then I do the same thing going all the way up. Now what that does, and we call this, or I call it, I don't know if this is official, I call that the European bar lacing. I use that for both derbies and for Oxfords, and I do it because it makes my foot feel as secure as this lace. And I think that that's important. Your foot needs to feel secure in the shoe. If you're ever wearing shoes that are not laced tightly and your foot moves around, you're going to feel, your feet are going to blister, and B, you're going to feel like the shoes don't fit because you're not wearing them correctly. And that is something that I just don't like. I just realized I have a small correction I need to make. This is not called the Architect. This is called the hash lacing. And I'll explain why as I move to my next shoe, which is the Architect. Yes, a little bit more complicated as we look at this one. You actually start here on the second, you push it in, then you come out, and then you move up here, then you go down, then you go down, and you do it underneath, right? So you're actually doing most of the crossing underneath, and then you go in, and then you go up here to tie it. So it's you feel like these parts are tying the shoe together at the end, which is good. The bad part is this part here needs to stay relatively tight when you're taking the shoe on and off, which makes it a lot less comfortable, in my opinion. Now, there are also two types of knots. You have the berluti knot, which is here, and you have your regular knot. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to walk through how to lace a pair, and how I store my shoelaces. And I'm going to just take this pair of shell. Here, I'm just going to angle the thing here so that I can work and do it. Now, I always tie my laces into a knot like this, because if you tie them into a knot, not a bad knot, but a small knot, it allows you to keep them there. So what I want to do is I want to do a comparison to this. This is your typical lace, and it's all under well, you start over, you have the bar here at the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually start at the bottom. Okay. And now what I'm going to do differently is here, I go from the bottom and I open up at the top. Here what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to do it the opposite way. And as I want to show you how different the shoes look with such a small difference. Okay, so you have like this little cross here, okay, and then we're going to, again, we're going from the top to the bottom every time we lace. And then of course on the last one, I'm going to go all the way to the top underneath because I don't like the way it feels when you go from the top to the bottom on the top, right? All right. So, and what did I do? I went in the wrong way. So see, I prefer it like this. So you pull it tight, it actually pulls the shoe tight. So, now here is the question. Do you see the difference between these two shoes? It's a very subtle difference. You got the X on the bottom, which is a little bit more visible. But here you can see you start from the inside and you go out, and it always buries underneath. Here it's coming from underneath and going in on the top. So a small difference that you can do while you're tying your shoes. Now, the next piece I want to do is I want to show you how to do bar lacing on a derby. Okay, so bar lacing, you always go in from the top because you want that bar at the bottom, right? So, very basic. Now, what I was talking about before is some people will go in and just do a inside piece right here, and on that inside, and then they'll go and they'll create the bar on the other side. I don't like doing that because that's what doesn't feel secure to me. So what I do is I'll go across here, and I'll move this to this side. Now, you have to make sure that the laces are not even on this method, because one side should be longer than the other because it has 2 bars versus 1. So the shorter one is the one that's in the middle there, and that comes out like so. And here, what I'm doing is I'm going to go inside. Okay, now you got to make sure you don't get tangled in the laces. I always find it easier doing it with the shoe pointed the other way, but that doesn't really work while we're doing that. So there you go. So now you can see my bar lacing on a derby. So what is this berluti knot everybody keeps writing about? So it starts the same way. Create a loop. You create another. And the only difference is you take your loop that you started with and you pull it inside. What's nice about this is that it has a different look, a slightly finished look, okay, at the end, and yet you still can just untie it. Okay, so it's an interesting way of doing it, a solid knot, but not a real big change, so you don't have to worry about your shoes falling off while you're walking. So anyway, this is Wisconsin Shoe Guy. Thanks for watching. I hope you found that interesting. So that's a little bit about how you can lace your shoes and different options for tying your shoes, including the dreaded how not to tie your shoe, because nobody likes it when the bow is up and down. That just looks tacky. So don't forget, choose the length of your laces based on the width of your of the eyelets on your shoe, as well as the number of eyelets for your shoe. That way you don't wind up with 4 or 5 inch loops on a pair of 2 eyelet chukkas. That's never a good look. So hey, thanks again for watching. This is Wisconsin Shoe Guy. I hope you found this beneficial, and please let me know. Appreciate all the comments. Thanks. Bye now.